Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming back again. This is Ken Childers, number 45. And because this is the last meeting of the year, I thought we'd kind of go back and go over and review some of the stuff, the main points that we've talked about, especially in their connection to subquantum kinetics and Paul Laviolette. So I'm going to do some original or their first reading here, and then I think Chip's going to take over, and then I'll jump in again at some point. So thanks for being here, guys. And Brandon, yeah, we can bring up the first part here. So I'm going to take my glasses off. Okay, so this is something that I wrote March 2nd of 2024, and this is these are actually Paul Laviolette's words, what an etheron is. And the etheron is basically the smallest known thing that creates our entire universe. Um, so the etheron, the subatomic particles and photons, which make up our physical universe, are themselves modulations of the ether substrate, i.e., wave patterns made up etheron concentrations and vortical etheric fluxes within particle cores that give them the property of spin. So if we regard etherons as conscious entities, and I have that highlighted, this is like the most important part that we'll ever talk about. The consciousness starts with the etherons, and they're what's forming the Turing wave, which is basically the main building block of our universe. So for physical form in subquantum kinetics is merely a manifestation of epiphenomenal generated continually by the ether flux, Paul Laviolette. Now, I looked up epiphenomenon because it's not a normal word, a secondary effect or byproduct that arises from but does not causally influence a process. So that is exactly Paul's definition of an etheron, and it's probably, like I said, one of the most important things that we'll learn. So the Turing wave. The Turing wave is a dodecahedron standing wave pattern that inverts on itself and vibrates between space-time, is where we are, which is 3 dimensions of space and one of time, and it vibrates back into time-space, which is 3 dimensions of time and 1 dimension of space. Everything in our universe emanates from a single point, which is the Turing wave. Something I wrote March 11th of 2024. And then in February 5th, I started thinking about the Turing wave and how it relates to us in the universe, essentially. So every single thing in our universe has one thing in common, which is the Turing wave, because it's the main building block. Could the Turing wave be the glue that holds everything together? Sort of a question, right? And this is love as we know it. So the Turing wave is source, just tuned to our frequency, which is the Turing wave in our universe. When source is tuned to a different frequency, then this is in a different universe among the multiverse. The Turing wave is the heartbeat of source at our frequency. So that's kind of how I see the Turing wave. And then we're going to dive into this awesome book. And I believe that Carmen actually knows David Hatchard Childress. But this is an excellent book. And chapter 9 is one on electrovitics by Tom Vallone. And before we start, Brandon, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the structure of the board of directors and the Starburst Foundation that Paul Av first started. Now, I know that you're the CEO and Theo is the vice president.
Yep.
So Thomas Vallone, who this is the chapter that we're going to read in the book here in a second. What is his title? Because I know.
Theo is first vice president and Tom is second vice president.
Okay, and then I'm first assistant vice president,
Yeah,
right?
first assistant vice president. Yeah, and I think you're first assistant secretary.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so that's why we're always talking about subquantum kinetics and everything, because it all does go back to Paul Laviolette. So I think Chip's going to do some awesome reading out of this book, and it's a chapter again from Tom Vallone, who's part of the board of directors of the Starburst Foundation.
Do you want to take it? I'll take it back to this so you can read here. So I'll just go
All
to.
right, so this is an excerpt from the anti-gravity files. Compilation of patents and reports edited by David Hatcher Childress. And I think he is an architect or sorts. I think he drew pictures of the Roswell craft that are in the museum at Roswell. Anyway,
wow.
chapter 9, Electrogravitics for Advanced Propulsion by Thomas Vallone, professional engineer. Some pictures here. Anti-gravity files, a small scout ship sized device. I see some gravity amplifiers in it, laying horizontally.
We have a whole bunch of information on that too, because John Hutchison sent us some cool stuff on that alien reproduction vehicle, I think is what it's called, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
an ARV, yeah.
Yeah, which is very cool.
This one has rivets, unlike the real ones.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so title of the paper, Electrogravitics for Advanced Propulsion by Thomas Vallone. Recently, two 1956 military documents, Electrogravitics Systems and The Gravitics Situation, originally published by the Gravity Research Group of London, which is a special weapons study unit, were declassified. These two documents were declassified, outlining T. Townsend Brown's anti-gravity discovery. There's a reference to in Atlantis Rising to an article in there in January 2000, and the subsequent Project Winter Haven.
Yep.
They were a vital new chapter in aviation research. Okay. For example, the documents state, unlike the turbine engine, electrogravitics is not just a new propulsion system, it is a new mode of thought in aviation and communications, and it's something that may become all-embracing. Very good. To explain electrogravitics is the science of using high-voltage electricity to provide propulsive force to aircraft or spacecraft of certain geometries. Geometry is important.
Mm-hmm.
Or as Gene Manning explains, the apparatus is pulled along by its self-generated gravity field, like a surfer riding a wave.
That's a great description.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, its discovery is often credited to Thomas Townsend Brown, T. Townsend Brown, physicist who was encouraged by his professor, Dr. Paul Byfield, a former classmate of Albert Einstein. Boy, there's some provenance there for those guys. All right, so, however, there are those who say that Professor Francis Neefer's experiments electrically charging lead balls published in the Electrical Experimenter in 1918 predates Byfield Brown. Unknown to many unconventional propulsion experts, T. Townsend Brown's electrogravitics work after the war involved a multinational project. American companies such as Douglas, Glenn Martin, General Electric, Bell, Convair, Lear, Sperry participated in the research effort. Countries such as Britain, France, Sweden, Canada, and Germany also had concurrent projects from 1954 through 56. Furthermore, through the investigative effort of Dr. Paul Laviolette, it has become clear that electrogravitics became an integral part of the B-2 stealth bomber today, giving it an unlimited range. Laviolette challenges us with the question, could the B-2 really be a realization of one of mankind's greatest dreams, an aircraft that has mastered the ability to control gravity? Mm-hmm. Laviolette's investigation is summarized in an article, the U.S. Anti-Gravity, the United States Anti-Gravity Squadron, I think is what that means, yep, which has been reprinted along with both reports mentioned above in the book, Electrogravitic Systems, a New Propulsion Methodology. Laviolette's book, Subquantum Kinetics, The Alchemy of Creation, includes a chapter on the theory of electrogravitics and a plot of applied voltage versus disk speed from the Naval Research Lab data. It starts around 40 kilovolts and 2 miles an hour. All right, the next page.
Also, Tom Ballon was who wrote this. One of his jobs was to brief senators on new energy devices, that kind of thing, something like that. Anyway, let's go.
Cool. That's cool.
Interesting. All right. All right, continuing. A curious fact revealed in T.T. Brown's first article, How I Control Gravity, which is in the publication Science and Invention 1929, is the alignment of the molecular gravitors. These massive dielectrics provided the most propulsive force when the differently charged elements were aligned with the voltage source. This sounds like a crystal plane alignment and perhaps explains the article Gravity Nullified, Quartz Crystals Charged with High Frequency Currents Lose Their Weight, which appeared 2 years earlier in the same magazine in September of 1927. My God. The editors had a change of heart, however, in the following issue and rescinded the article.
I think I have that article because Carmen gave it to me. We'll go through it at some point.
My God. T.T. Brown's first patent, blah, 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 issued in 1934, electrostatic motor, is a fascinating free energy machine as well as a propulsion source. Claiming an efficiency of 1,000,000 to 1, Brown causes the massive dielectrics to be the workhorse of the motor, exceeding, in his words, the well-known pinwheel effect or reaction from a high voltage, move to the next page, a high voltage point discharge. Much of what we know about T.T. Brown is from his numerous patents, all of them reprinted in the publication Electrogravitic Systems book. Although I was fortunate enough to correspond with him in 1981 when he was at the University of Florida. A sample of his detailed correspondence is contained in the book Ether Technology, A Rational Approach to Gravity Control by Rose Sigmund in 1977. Which is the only other introduction to Brown's work. The important fact from that book is that DC power supply went up to 250 kilovolts, with a substantial force being displayed starting around 150 kilovolts. Here we get an idea of the range of voltage necessary for successful electrogravitics that even recent military contractors mysteriously disregard. An example is R.L. Talley's report to the Air Force concerned with exploring the Byfield-Brown effect, which allegedly converts electrostatic energy directly into propulsive force in a vacuum environment, in quotes. On the next page, it was entitled 21st Century Propulsion Concept, but only tested Brown saucer designs in the range of 19 kilovolts and predictably failed to produce results. Yeah, that's way undercharged.
Yep.
Brown's saucer tests show a propulsive force with the positive voltage leading and the negative edge trailing. What's the gravity warp wave? A high voltage electrically charged The high voltage electrically charged the air around the craft with a cloud of positive ions forming in front of the craft and a cloud of negative ions behind. This has been verified with tests recently performed by researcher Larry Davenport. These tests are reprinted in the book Electrogravitic Systems and can be seen in the commercial video Free Energy, the Race to Zero Point, for which I was the technical consultant.
Check that out.
We can have a look at those. We can have a look at these pictures if you want. I mean, I don't know if they.
Yeah, let's go back and just summarize the pictures real quick if we can. They're in a dark lab, poor lighting, and it would appear you got some things moving within the electrogravitics field. So changing the field around some metallic objects.
Discs.
And
discs.
Yes, this one looks like a saucer by itself that may be levitating slightly. It's hard to tell. Flying discs is the point that he's attempting to show with these pictures.
Yeah, and it's also important to know that these discs are made of massive high K materials. This is what allows the magic to happen, is these high K dielectrics.
Tom
Yeah.
Ballon was mentioning there. It's like the engine, the powerhouse engine, is a dielectric.
Exactly. It's the motor. Yeah, it's the motor system.
Yeah, we need to
Definitely.
create the potentum. All right, so continuing, in March 1952, the Townsend Brown Foundation Library in Hollywood, California was visited by Air Force Major General Victor Bertrandius. He reported to Lieutenant General H.A. Craig that he was frightened by the flying demonstration because it was in private hands, and he felt it was in the stage in which the atomic development was in the early days, as in dangerous. He expressed concern about if it ever gets away, meaning we presume into enemy hands. A confidential security investigation was thereby initiated concerning the Foundation T.T. Brown. Shortly afterwards, an evaluation by the Office of Naval Research in September of 1952 surprisingly devalued the brown saucers to a well-known phenomenon of the electric wind, claiming it would perform less at high voltage and zero in a vacuum.
Dummies. They're dummies.
That's intentional. The Navy declassified the report in October 1952. However, today, copies of the report are not available from the Naval Research Laboratory in Washington, D.C. Yeah, they deep sixed it.
Yep.
All right. In 1956, continuing, Brown returned from a research trip in France where he verified the electrogravitics worked well in a vacuum. In other words, the environment of outer space. Intravia magazine published an article in the same year about Brown entitled, in quotes, "Towards Flight Without Stress or Strain or Weight," end quote, and alluded to possible speeds of several hundred miles an hour. 1958, Fate magazine writer Gaston Burridge described Brown's metal discs that reached up to 30 inches in diameter. Until 1960, Brown and Agnew Bosson worked on various designs in Bonson's laboratory, which were recorded by Bonson's daughter on Super 8 film. Today, a VHS converted silent video is available of those experiments entitled, in quotes, Thomas Townsend Brown, Bonson Lab, 1958 to 1960. In 1964, Bonson, an experienced pilot, mysteriously flew into electrical wires and died. The Bonson heirs subsequently dissolved the laboratory project. All right, subtitle, Electrogravitics Puzzle. In 1958, Dr. Paul Violet was in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
85.
85.
Yeah, 1985, Dr. Paul Violet was in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., looked up the work Gravity in the card catalog. Surprisingly, he found the listing for electrogravitic systems, a report that was missing from the stacks. When the librarian tried to locate any other copies through the interlibrary loan, she commented, it must be an exotic document because she could only find one in the country, which was at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Wow, right?
Thus, LaViolette was successful in obtaining a copy of the formerly classified document.
Let's stop there for a second and
He
see
made
if we can
30
find
copies.
that.
He made 30 copies of it afterwards. He told us at the astronomy presentation he did at the sort of astronomy club. He made about 30 copies of it after he got.
So, Brendan, I have a question. Do we have access to that now?
Well, I mean, Mariana would have them at her house, I should imagine.
Okay, that's good to know. Very good.
We can tear into a few of those with some readings.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thus, LaViolette was successful in obtaining a copy of the formerly classified document. Going on, the mystery continued. 7 years later, when contacting Wright-Patterson AFB Technical Library, they surprisingly found no reference in the, going on to the next page, they surprisingly found no reference in the catalog. They did locate, in the computer-based card catalog, they did locate the document on the shelves, however, after being asked to search for it. To summarize, the report has historic value because there's 6 subtitles here, 7. It validates T.T. Brown's experiments. It lists the major corporations that were collaborating on electrogravitics. Number 3, it includes the requirements for supersonic speed.
Mm.
Number 4, it shows the continuity from Project Winter Haven in 1952. They connected it. The
Yep.
report includes a list of electrostatic patents. And number 6, it had been classified by the Air Force for an undetermined amount of time, which underscores its importance.
Wow.
Yeah, Air
We
Force
need
is
we
the
need
bad
to
guys.
see that. We need to see this
Yeah,
document.
I can
Absolutely.
quickly, if you want, I can quickly show you what the document looks like. Hold a minute. So if I go to the thing and go on there, go down.
This early work is so important because it demonstrates very often the raw intuition that those guys brought forward. And it's probably even more important than a damn device. What is it that got them thinking the way they did?
Yeah.
2021. 21. You can't get this. This is listed thing. So here it is here. Can you see Townsend Brown there?
Yep.
So if I just go, I'll show you the document that he. I mean,
Oh
you
my
can't get the
God.
you can't get the volume.
Awesome,
You can't
Brandon.
get the volume on here. You can't get the volume on here because it's my desktop. I need to.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I just
But-
quickly, just like if I just show you, it should see the document somewhere here. I think he did it here.
His own private laboratory for a few years in 1926.
Wow.
Anyway, I think this is Townsend Brown, but I mean he showed the document. Let me just see if I can find it. It's gonna I don't think he may not have done it at the beginning. May have done it at the end. Okay, so it's further down here, maybe. Here it is here. You see, I found it. It's
Okay. I'm going to take a screenshot of it.
The electrogravitic systems and examination of electrostatic motion, dynamic Counterbury.
Yeah, Counterbury. I've heard that word before.
Space Center Control, Aviation Studies International. And he told us, if you listen to the volume, I'd have to put it on get it up on my. Let me just see if I can do that.
Maybe next time we can do that, Brandon.
That's fine. So let's just go back to the.
Yeah, there's a treasure trove we can dive into there, Ed.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yep.
Yeah, we get John on the line too, and get him to muse about some of these things.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so continuing. Prepared by the Aviation Studies International Limited Corporation Gravity Research Group, Special Weapons Study Unit in England in February 1956, it defines electrogravitics as a synthesis of electrostatic energy use for propulsion. The report historically notes that, in quotes, electrogravitics had its birth after the war, when Townsend Brown sought to improve on various proposals that then existed for electrostatic motors sufficiently to produce some visible manifestation of sustained motion. As mentioned in the first section of the report, both Project Winter Haven in 1952 and Electrogravitic Systems in 1956 proposed a saucer as the basis of a possible interceptor with Mach 3 capability. Another interesting detail presented is the necessity of an insulator with extremely high dielectric constants of 30,000 for supersonic speed, when the best dielectrics of that era were around 5,000. All right, that's a problem. This section goes on to describe that the creation of a local gravitational system by the craft, which would confer upon the fighter the sharp edge changes of direction typical of motion in space. The January 1955 entry states, back in 1948 and 49, the public in the U.S. had a surprisingly clear idea what a flying saucer should or could do. There has never at any time been any realistic explanation of what propulsion agency could make.
I won't smoke that. Yeah.
what propulsion agency could make it do those things, but its ability to move with its own gravitational field was presupposed from its maneuverability. Yet all was the last 2 years before electrostatic. Yet all this was at least 2 years before the electrostatic energy was shown to produce propulsion. It is curious that the public were so far ahead of the empiricists on this occasion. The intriguing part of this commentary is that without any space program at the time, the report complains that the public knows how UFOs behave and refers to sharp edge changes of direction, high G-force changes. Later in the report, we read, in quotes, one of the difficulties in 54 and 55 was to get aviation to take electrogravitics seriously. However, corporations such as Douglas, Sperry, Bell, GE, Hillard, Lear, and Convair are then described as with an ongoing project perspective. For example, we read that General Electric is working on the use of electronic rigs to make adjustments to gravity. Glenn Martin say gravity control could be achieved. And the next page, in 6 years. Clark Electronics state that they have a rig and they have their new view of the source of gravity's force will be understood sooner than some people think. This information makes the report exciting reading and gives it an air of suspense. Even today, electrogravitics continues to attract public attention in the press. The latest is an article entitled Military Power, published in the British aviation magazine Air International in January of 2000. That includes copies of LaViolette's drawings from the Electrogravitics Systems book. The article also cites Aviation Week and Space Technology publication article from March of '92. Black world engineers, scientists encourage using highly classified technology for civil applications, which caused LaViolette to investigate the B-2 bomber connection to T.T. Brown's electrogravitics.
Which is awesome that he did that.
New subsection. John Searle's electrogravity. John R.O. Searle of England constructed numerous craft purported to fly with high voltage. See the recent biography, Anti-Gravity, The Dream Made Reality book by John Thomas. However, one correction to the anti-gravity article from Atlantis Rising publication, number 22 issue, is that the positive pole was traditionally at the periphery of Searle's crafts. This is important because Searle describes the control of the imbalance of positive voltage on the edges to steer the craft. He found that saucers would travel toward the more positive side, exactly like T.T. Brown's saucers behave.
Amazing, right?
Throughout the 60s and the 70s, Searle produced many newsletters detailing the work he was doing. Since I corresponded with him in 1981, I also received some of these reports. The importance of his experiments lies in the electrogravitics phenomena associated with them. In the June 1st, 68 issue of the Searle National Space Research Consortium newsletter, Barrett reports the ionization of the air and permanent electric polarity of dielectrics were common, along with the anti-gravity effects. In the June 1471 issue of the newsletter, Bernard Vegs reports that a pink halo surrounded the craft. Oh, I've heard that one with Cal Richardson. And describes the effect of the millions of volts that were generated. This type of description is found throughout the reports and probably was measured by the length of the spark discharge, considering the approximate voltage breakdown of air. Highlighted. Barrett describes in the June 1st, 68 issue a vacuum layer that surrounds the craft, preventing ionization breakdown of the air. Similarities between Searle's high voltage propulsion and Brown's high voltage propulsion, that both were based upon the principles of electrogravitics as theoretically predicted by Dr. LaViolette in his previously mentioned book, Some Quantum Kinetics.
That's the vacuum plasma bubble sheath that they just described that actually surrounds the craft. Yep.
Cal Richardson surrounded his pink Volkswagen with it. and then flew it to the moon. All right, new subtitle, The Hutchinson Effect. 1980, George Hathaway, a professional engineer licensed in Canada, along with entrepreneur Alex Pizarro, formed a small company to devote and promote what is referred to as the Hutchinson Effect. It was named after its inventor, John Hutchinson, who'd like to experiment with a combination of Tesla coils and Van de Graaff generators at the same time. Much of the information about the lift and disruption effects has been reported at various, on the next page, has been reported at various conferences, such as the Third International Symposium on Non-Conventional Energy Technology, held in Hull, Quebec in 1986. Videotapes of much of the phenomena have been shown on Japanese TV as well. Hathaway also assembled a 3-hour videotape that documents the TV interviews, reports, and actual events. To summarize, the experiments were conducted with 250 kilovolts of DC power on the Van de Graaff and about the same voltage of AC power on the Tesla coil. The total real power was about 1.5 kilowatts continuously, RMS, I guess, according to Hathaway. Besides the disruptive effects, there were numerous, which were numerous. Besides the disruptive effects, which were numerous, the lifting of various heavy objects by the field was most impressive. These events can be seen at the end of the commercial video. In quotes, free energy, the race to 0 point. In regards to the AC contribution to the field, Hathaway reports that he measured a small voltage of 2 millivolts per meter in the active region, besides the DC offset. This is a small AC signal, but on top of a high voltage DC signal, it performs amazing feats.
I've talked about that before. It's called bootstrapping.
Yes, and I think that's Sparky Sweet's little box. Same thing. Performs amazing feats. The importance of the Hutchinson effect to Brown electrogravitics is the AC ripple on the high DC voltage.
Mm-hmm.
A reference to this may be found in the military report by Dr. Dennis Cravens, who gave T.T. Brown a high rating of practicality. Cravens reported in his evaluation of Brown that older high voltage systems always had some AC ripple to the regulated signal, and wonders if this had any effect on Brown's phenomenon. There's a reference there to Craven's electric propulsion study. Later, let's see, Dr. LaViolette also found this factor to have particular electrogravitic significance. They're recognizing this bootstrap effect.
Yep.
The B-2 stealth bomber connection, new subtitle. Thanks to Dr. LaViolette reporting in his article, U.S. Anti-Gravity Squadron, there's substantial evidence that electrogravitics research of the 1950s actually results in the B-2 stealth bomber auxiliary propulsion as implied.
Mm-hmm.
Summarized Dr. LaViolette's article with references cited herein. The following facts are the most convincing. All right, we'll go through these one at a time. Appears to be about 7 of them. The B-2 charges the leading edges of its wing-like body with high voltage. Number 2, the B-2 is shaped just like T.T. Brown suggested an electrogravitic craft should look for maximum charge separation.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, Northrop tested leading edge charging in 1968. Number 4, B-2 electrically charges the exhaust, similar to the suggestion by T.T. Brown that the craft should be powered by needlepoint flame jet generators, which electrically charge the exhaust.
That's really important part right there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, with a fossil fuel burning engine, yeah, ionize this shit. Number 5, Aviation Week periodical admits the existence of dramatic classified technologies applicable to aircraft control and propulsion on the B-2. Oh, oops. Number 6, Aviation Week also disclosed the high-density dielectric ceramic ram made by powdered depleted uranium that happens to have a mass density of 3 times that of the high-K dielectrics tested in the 1950s.
Interesting.
Oh, that's the secret sauce, that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The B2's number 7. The B2's emergency power units, EPU, can drive an electrical generator on the next page at high altitudes or even in space, since the fuel can be made to decompose rapidly even without oxygen. Number 8, Edward Aldridge, Secretary of the Air Force, admits the B2 creates no vapor trail at high altitudes. It's decomposing the fuel. Number 9, the decomposed gases from the EPUs can function as the ion carrying medium in much the same way as hot exhaust gases from the air-breathing flame jet generators.
So there's a switch on the dash of the B2 and of the NORAD version of Air Force One that says coast mode. When you put it into coast mode, you're putting into electrogravitic mode. And I have some confirmations of that. I'll just say that.
Very important. Okay, so continuing, these details create a sense of excitement about the world's foremost aircraft. Dr. LaViolette argues that the electrogravitic drive will function better at higher speeds due to the better flow of ions. Therefore, it is likely, he says, that the B-2 actually is a supersonic aircraft, especially since the 1968 leading-edge charging experiments were for supersonic softening of the shock wave. Yeah, right. Okay. House Representative Robert Walker was quoted recently in Popular Science, Secrets of Groom Lake, as promoting the idea of declassifying military secrets that will help commercial development. We hope that this trend will continue so that the advanced shuttle designs may be acquire an electrogravitic drive. Through a proposal he submitted in 1990, Dr. LaViolette made NASA aware that an electrogravitic drive would be a feasible propulsion method for the Mars journey because calculations show that transit time would be less than 1 month instead of half a year to a year.
Yep.
It is especially attractive since it uses so little power when it is operational and verified by Brown to work well in a vacuum. More information about electrogravitics and Brown's patents are available in my book, in quotes or italics, Electrogravitic Systems, Reports on a New Propulsion Methodology. Many of the books and videos mentioned in this article are available as a public education service from a nonprofit organization, Integrity Research Institute.
Yeah, and he has another article in this book that we might go through later on. Thomas Vallone does. Yeah.
By the way,
So
I can. By the way, guys, I can quickly show you this recording on my desktop of
oh
Paul
yeah,
about
yeah, we got it
the
sorted out.
Just, so I'm doing it on my let's just take that down, stop that share there. See, and I will go
Cool.
to share with sound. On my mouse has just frozen in a minute. That's it. Is it better? Take that out. Go back in. Can you hear me? I'm being too clever. How should I?
Just let them continue, Paul.
Okay, here I've got it here. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I got
Oh, yeah.
Shut off.
The
Okay,
recording stopped too, Brandon, because you got.
stopped.
But it
Recording
said that
stopped.
it's recording again, so we'll have to look at that after. Something happened there when you got dropped out.
Oh yeah, I thought I was just being too clever by half. Let's have a look at this thing then. So that's that was also Laviolette there. I think no, that was someone else. This is Laviolette down here. So here it is here, and here he's talking about it, about the book somewhere here.
This is just like 4 or 5 years ago.
2021.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can find it. It's a B2 bomber, blah blah blah. the guy, the president of my astronomy society, wanted Paul to talk about electrogravitics. I just here. Can you see that? Look,
Yep. Yep.
him talking about it.
We find it in only one library. I said, where is that? Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
Hmm.
That's the same place they reported to have taken the wreckage from the crash at Roswell. So I did the interlibrary loan request, and surprisingly, they sent it to me. You see this black bar, this blacking out what said here before, which was confidential. So at one time, this was classified confidential. So I may have been one of the first civilians to see this. I immediately made 20 copies before I sent it back. And I was sitting on this. I was in Portland, Oregon at the time, where I was doing my work on subquantum kinetics. But anyway, this is an eye-opening study. Here's talking about all these aircraft companies that were doing research on electrogravitics between 1954 and 1956. So immediately after Brown had submitted his Project Winterhaven study, it catalyzed all of these companies to start working on this. They saw this as the technology of the future. That we could.
Do you want to stop? Shall I stop there? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's great. And, we know that everything went dark shortly after this period, essentially. And it should have been in the public domain. That's something that Chris Beskar actually talked about. That's some of the stuff that he was talking about, saying, we should have had this at the beginning of the 60s, just like the Jetsons on TV back in the day, when I was watching it as a kid. Brandon, there's two more slides that we didn't get to.
Yeah. Okay.
And there might be two recordings as well here because of what happened. We'll just have to watch that.
Well, this is
Yeah, so the other day, I was talking about the mother star that's at the center of the Milky Way. And it just so happens that Elena Denon took a trip to the center of the galaxy by teleporting, but this is actually her drawing of what she saw. So this is actually the mother star. So there is not a black hole at the center of our galaxy. There's a mother star, but there is a singularity at the center of the mother star. And again, Elena said to Thorhan, "Is that the black hole?" As they were looking at it, and Thorhan said, "Don't call it a black hole. It's a vortex singularity." So there's a drawing here, and then the other one is just the same thing, but from a distance. So this is the Milky Way galaxy, and you can see the mother star is very, very, very bright at the center. And this is something that Paul LaViolette, Subquantum Kinetics, talks about. And here we have confirmation of someone that actually got to go and check this out. So I just wanted to add that. And this is Ken Shoulders number 45. It might be in two parts, but that's cool too as well. And Brandon, thank you for finding that, because we need to look at that more in the future. And Chip, thank you for doing the reading today. It's amazing. Do you guys have any other comments or questions before we shut the recording off?
I found it interesting. The dielectric is almost like the motor, the power motor, because
It is.
the quality of the dielectric somehow enables you to tap in to this free energy, if you like, or this anti-gravity effect.
With fractal emissions for the most part, and Moray could probably talk a little bit about that, but that's, the gist of it. And so the high K materials, the best material that I know of, which has a high K of 23,000, is BZT. So that's barium zirconium titanate. Now, barium titanate is also used extensively, and its K is a little bit lower than that. But the BZT is the best one that I know of in the public realm. Now, something else that's kind of interesting is I was going back looking at some of the Stavati interviews that we did, And one thing that Chris talked about is the titanium diboride material that the SM39 Razor is going to be built out of. And he said that that material at certain temperatures can be superconductive. So there could be a connection to that material to high K as well. Just having said that. All
So
right.
I have a technical question just to run past everybody. We're talking about a high K material, both in terms of permittivity and permeability, I guess. Permissivity and permeability. Permissivity and permittivity, electrical, magnetic, etc. And it can be used for both. If you have superconducting effects, you're talking about a magnetic field. In electrogravitics, with that kind of a potential of hundreds of thousands of kilovolts, you've got a huge differential that you can build up with that kind of material as well. But what is it that imparts the spin in a high electrogravitic situation? You need to create quark spin to create the anti-gravity effect.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole piece missing there, and it's so hard to experiment with. But how does that happen? That's what I like John Hutchinson to muse about, or even Chris Beskar. Yeah.
So if you understand how an MRI machine works, and I've been in them a whole bunch of times, I was even thinking about how it worked while I was in it, actually. Yeah. Basically, everything has spin, but it has precession. So there's a bit of a wobble to the spin. So if you can use resonance, and actually it's called jump resonance, if I'm correct, if you can use resonance to make them all spin and have exactly the same path, you might want to call it, then that's how some of this stuff works. The other thing with high K material is it's the stress in the material that causes these effects to happen. And that goes back to fractal emissions, for example.
Right.
It's also the like in electromagnetic light waves, light waves, the electromagnetism. The photon is using both electricity and magnetism in a dynamo. Because the spin is producing the magnetism. So in a dynamo, you've got electricity and magnetism. The magnets rotated in a coil rotated in a magnetic field. So the magnetic field, what the property of spin gives us is magnetism. So electromagnetic waves, X-rays, visible light. There's electricity and magnetism in the wave. So it's fundamental to but why is spin? Why does spin produce magnetism? So.
Well, in addition, Brendan, the spin also gives us gravity. Mm-hmm. And there's where light comes in, and the anisotropy associated with three-dimensional time in particular. Angular omega is the spin, the angular momentum is gravity.
Yeah, it's the velocity.
Yes, the velocity, the spin rate is the passage of time. It's time.
Yeah.
And so those are conflated in the mix, the model you're talking about with the magnetics as well. And I'm sitting here, and we all want to do a superfluid, superforce, Sal Paez thing that just mulch everything together. But I think we need to divide it up a little bit.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
There's a whole damn transfer function missing between controlling the spin, like Ed's talking about, and the precession and the wobble and everything else in a very regulated fashion. Like Poiré pointed out at the beginning of the conversation, the devil's in the details. And then getting in a very controlled environment, creating a gravitational field and some superconducting effects as well, and controlling the whole circus. And that maybe is done with consciousness.
Etherons is a better way to put it.
Same
thing, right?
Yeah, the most awesome quantum field in the entire universe. Consciousness has to be infused into this circus at some point. No way we can. It's happening at terahertz frequencies. For crying out loud. How the hell are we going to control that?
Yeah. It's the little etherons. That's why I had the description of etherons in
And
the Turing
everything
wave at the beginning of this, right?
everything has magnetism, but most materials
That's
is
right.
barely detectable. It kind of neutralizes. All materials
There's
have magnetism, but most
three different
materials
kinds of
barely
magnetism
detected in it. Anyway, go on.
because
Yeah,
there's
and magnetism, transmits through literally everything. You can't bottle it up
Yeah,
very easily.
it's everywhere. It's in the
Yeah.
fundamental process of
yeah, and I think it's Pavel Osmera's work, who's in our group, that talks about this connection. That's why his work is so brilliant, is that connection back to the magnetism
and what is
part
it
as
in
well,
the
right?
atom? Why is it that the magnetism? Why is it the spin why is it important in an atom, an electron, and a nucleus in an atom? Without spin? Why is spin important for an atom? For an
Exactly.
It's
Exactly. Because, we talk about charge all the time. It seems to be the most obvious, relevant thing in controlling everything we're trying to do. But underneath all of that is controlling quark spin, subatomic quark spin.
I
It would
think
seem to be, yeah, it
I
would seem to
think
be far more important, and yet we don't understand. Classical physics cannot predict transmutation of materials through spin alone. It's always done with charge, right? And we've talked about this ad nauseum, and so I'm still chewing on it. And we're still missing something, damn it, that creates the spin motor that Brandon's talking about.
well,
Why is it that the spin works?
it's quite simple. Once you bias the ether, then you create curl. In other words, when you bias the ether, it wants to spin. That's
Well, it's
that's what
spinning, yes, as a superfluid. The entire
yeah.
ether is a
But
superfluid,
but you have
but
to bias it. That's the whole point here, and
I understand.
that's the
Yeah,
part. Like with a vacuum tube, you need to bias it to turn it on. It's the same thing here with the electrogravitics. There has to be a bias, which is the DC portion, and then the AC portion gets bootstrapped on top of it, and
we
that's
understand.
yeah.
Yeah, no, we understand that from Sparky Suites devices and everything else, but how does that work at a subatomic level? We do not have a
Well,
good model of that.
well,
We can
no,
talk, we can talk in
it's
macro sense. We
it's
can
the
talk in a
etherons.
macro sense, but
No,
we
but it's the
don't understand what
etherons.
happens at an atomic level.
But
How
we
does
do,
that work?
Chip, we
Well,
do
there's a
understand though.
there's a
It's the etherons doing the job. And
I'm
Right,
that's
so
why
but
asking.
we
I'm
can't
asking a
even
chat.
prove that etherons exist, Ed, and I happen to believe they do.
I'm
It's a
asking a chat GPT question.
subatomic effect. So how do we prove to the theoretical physicists at MIT with new physics that what we're talking about is a subquantum kinetics problem involving etherons and Turing waves driving temporal
so
anisotropy and gravity and electrogravitics and everything? We're
so
missing a
I
huge
can
transfer.
I can answer that question too. There are 29 predictions that come out of subquantum kinetics that have to do with at the subquantum level, but also at the astrophysical level, that have all come to fruition or to truth in the last 40 or 50 years that Paul has been working on them, essentially. And it's something that Brandon and I have gone through. There's actually a YouTube on my channel about half of them, and we're going to do the other half. And then once you have that understanding, it all comes together, essentially. Chip, yeah.
So I'll read this here. So I said, why does an atom need particle spin to function properly? Short answer, because without spin, atoms would collapse into a boring, unstable mess. Deeper answer below. Core idea, particle spin is essential because it allows electrons to organize themselves into stable structures around the nucleus. Without spin, the rules that keep atom structures simply wouldn't work. Spin
Yeah.
creates a density of electrons, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, doesn't Paul say that it's the vortex action, and that's the spin is the essence of that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's modeling it from a lower level. He's making an ether model, right? And
Subquantum. Yeah.
so if you want to create structure, that spin is part of it, creating the structure from the ether, right? And so
Yeah.
uh, that that principle, you can just start doing large scale experiments. Even Maxwell's equations, right? The curl of B is the change of E, the change of electric field with time. You're
Yep.
going to start to effectively induce spin just by that relationship.
Yeah. The
So
curl. Yeah.
it's the kind of like the foundation of structure. You don't get much until you start creating a spin, and then if you do a spin of a spin, you're into really creating a lot of structure, because now you've no a spin of a spin, like precession. The ether wants to lock you in. It doesn't want to do that. But if you
Yep.
take charge, and the charge, especially the heavy particles, follows that, all of a sudden you're manipulating the ether. So the key experiments come from the heavy particles, the ions.
Yep.
Right? That was the critical part of
Mhm.
the electrogravitics, and as well as the ion propulsion. Both are happening. In fact, it's hard to separate the two. And the one interesting thing in reading Townsend Brown's work that I liked was, and I never forgot it, the big thrust occurs during a sparking action, an
Yeah. Yeah.
abrupt sparking action. That's your kind of your abrupt change in the ether, right?
Yep.
That's the abrupt event that's going to spill some extra energy into the system over and above, the energy when it's in equilibrium.
Yeah.
So a little bit is happening.
So when they fly the B-2, and here's something that most people don't know, the radar system that's in the B-2 that makes it electrogravitic was designed by Hughes Aerospace. Hughes Aerospace are the leaders in electrogravitics and always have been, ahead of everyone. Private company, Stavati is a private company. So these two companies, there's definitely work done there essentially, right? It's kind of important, yeah, to know that.
We don't know the extent of classified work and how advanced any of that is, because we just don't know. It's classified. So all these ideas could easily have been matured,
Yeah.
and we don't know to what yet.
Yeah. Well, we do know because of the secret space program.
Well, right,
That's
claiming to use it,
yeah.
right? So
William Tompkins, right? That's where the knowledge comes from, because he was the one that actually developed all this stuff. Tompkins worked on 72 alien projects. He called them alien projects when he was talking about electrogravitics or anti-gravity. That was his code word for it. He worked on 72 of those in the big think tank that was at TRW, which was the largest think tank ever conceived on the planet.
Plus, wasn't a lot of it gifted? Didn't we have contact already occurring?
Sort of, but I talked to Chris Beskar, and Chris is doing some amazing work in the classified programs that I know about, and he says no, everything comes from us. It comes from the men that I work with. It comes from most of the people that work at Stavati are actually retired people that came from Lockheed Skunk Works. A lot of the people came retired and then went to work for Stavati. So Chris is saying, no, it's not really stuff that's been gifted. I think the most important thing here is to understand that Paul's subquantum kinetics says that we create this well or hole in front of the craft and a hill behind it. And that's the subquantum kinetics aspect that really makes this
Just to let you
the
know, we're still
understanding
recording.
of it.
Just to let you know, we're
Yeah,
still
yeah,
recording.
yeah. That's all. It's all good. But we could probably stop at some point here if you guys are ready to do that. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for listening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you.